Hi, everyone. So again, this is Polymer, the future of web components. A little bit about myself. I've been at Comcast for about 8 years now. This is my family. We got my wife, Sandra, in the middle, my son, Theo, and then we also have 2 international students, Max and Abby. They're great. So at my 8 years at Comcast, I've worked on Xfinity TV, which is bringing premium content onto the web. And I say premium content, so HBO, Showtime, Starz, Cinemax. We were the first to actually allow you to watch that on the web because there's a lot of security that's involved. And more than that, just getting permission from the HBO and Showtime to be able to do that is a pain in the butt. I've also made a TV grid twice. You know, you got to put the twice in there, once for Xfinity TV and once for xtv.comcast.net, which is the future site of Xfinity TV. And I currently work on Xfinity Home for Comcast, which is the security product, and we'll talk about that more towards the end. So quick survey. How many people in the audience, raise your hand if you've heard of web components before? Great. How many people have used web components? Okay. How many people have heard of Polymer? Probably because of the talk? No. How many people have used Polymer? Okay. Quite a few. So again, my talk is Polymer, the future of web components, and I italicized the word future because in order to talk about the future, you first have to talk about the past. That's kind of like the rule. So HTML was originally created by Sir Tim Berners-Lee in 1989. And yes, that's Sir Tim Berners-Lee, not Al Gore. And the original purpose for HTML was to share research documents as quickly as possible, right? They wanted to publish information to as many scientists and get it out in the rest of the world as soon as they could. And it worked great for that reason. And for anybody who didn't do the math, 1989, it's 80s themed convention here. That's over 25 years ago. So if you were born in the 80s, you are probably about 25 years old or older. This was the oldest screenshot that I could find online that was available for commercial use. And this was in 2004, this photo, and this shows Mozilla before it was Firefox, going down memory lane. And next to it is Netscape Navigator. And if we look back at what the web was like, this is 11 years ago, it was very flat. It was just sharing information, and it had links and simple images. And just to give you more reference, Java appeared in 1995. So that's like 5 years later. Java's pretty old. HTML is much older. And if you look at the last couple years, what we've been trying to do with HTML is build rich internet applications. At Comcast, we've been building Xfinity TV. Mike showed this earlier today. But this is a place that you can actually go online and view what has been recorded on your set-top box. So we have this new X1 platform. You record a show. You can go online. You can actually view that show that you recorded on your box on your web browser, on your Android, on your iOS, on whatever device. This is actual shows that is on my set-top box, mostly my wife's stuff. But you know what we want to do is we want to take a closer look at this. And if we look at the markup of this, it's still using HTML5 tags, sections, your divs. You know, everything is just divs. And if we look a little closer, this is what we call an XTV poster or poster art. And it's just the picture of the show. And there's a list item, which describes the carousel that's here. And then we have a button. The main image poster, I believe, is the button so that you can click on it, and it zooms in, and then you can watch it, or you could click options. And it's just using your HTML markup that was originally written for articles. And the problem is, like, even with HTML5, the new tags that we got were headers, footers, asides, and it's still based for, like, WordPress and publishing information, and not really for rich internet applications. So this was a term divinitis, which I've actually heard like 5 years ago, actually maybe even older than that, which is in order to solve things, you just basically add more and more divs to the page. And it gets confusing. And the question that we want to ask is, what if we could change our markup to be xtv-carousel, and we create an xtv poster, and we just give it the program ID, we put the relevant information into there, and that would become our markup. And what you get is you get a lot simpler markup, easier to read through, and you get reuse. You know, rather than having LIs, buttons, divs, and all this additional markup, it's much smaller DOMs too. And essentially, you're creating building blocks. You're creating your own HTML markup that you can create. Just a tangent, whenever you do presentations, you actually have to use commercially available pictures. And I had all these other photos in there, and I sent it to the review board, and they were like, you can't use any of those photos. So my wife, she's really great with a camera, and we have these blocks that my son uses now. So we got to use those. And so this leads us into web components. Web components are, they don't really, there's no spec for web components. There's actually 4 different specs that make up web components. And that's templates, HTML imports, shadow DOM, and custom elements. And we're going to look into them each individually. In order to do that, I've enlisted a helper. This is my son again. I'm a proud father. He's 1. He's really adorable. He's a pain in the butt at bedtime. Other than bedtime, he's the cutest thing ever. So the first thing we want to look at is templates. This is JS Fiddle for anybody who's not familiar with it. You put HTML here, you put JavaScript here, any CSS that you want here, and this is the output on the bottom right. Template tags let you put markup into the DOM, which is parsed by the browser. So it's put into the browser. Wait, I'm back in full screen. Go back into full screen. It's put into the browser, but the browser parses it but ignores it. So any image tags that you have in a template, any script tags that you have in there, browser completely ignores it, except that it parses it so that it knows what the DOM content is. And the only way to access it is through JavaScript. So you have to select the template, you get the content from the template tag, and then you can put it into the DOM. And when we do that, we get a picture. This page. So that's templates. And right now you're probably thinking, well, that's great. Like, what do you do with templates? And it's just another building block that is really not that awesome by itself, but when you put all the specs together, you get something awesome from it. So looking at HTML imports, again, by itself, not that great, but it's the same thing as like including a remote JavaScript tag or a CSS tag. You can do the same thing with HTML. You create an HTML file which just has this template tag in there that I commented out, and now I imported it. I can get that link tag. I can find the content in that link tag. I can select it, and I can put it on the page the same way I did before. And leading into the next slide, we're going to talk about, in the page here, I have a style color red for my H3 tags, and the template tag has color blue. And when I imported this into the DOM, the problem is that it overrode the styles that I currently have on the page. So this H3 tag should actually be red, but since the template tag got inserted into the DOM, it then read that style and applied it, so it made everything blue. This page, and back to this one, which leads us into the shadow DOM. Shadow DOM gives you the ability to take an element on the page, such as this div tag, select it, and then create a shadow root on that DOM element. And the shadow root is basically its own little world inside of that DOM element that you can add content into that shadow root, and the styles will not bleed out to the rest of the page. And this is really great for reusing HTML snippets. So here we see that the blue tag that was in that template is applied just to this tag. And finally, to bring it all together, we have custom elements. This allows you to create the Theo Rocks HTML tag. Is that better? I'll even make it super huge. So here what we did is we used the template tag, but we're going to create a custom element. In order to do that, you call object.create with the HTML prototype. That's standard. And then you get these created callbacks, attached callbacks, detached callbacks, and attribute change callbacks. That's all part of the spec. So as soon as this tag is read by the browser, or on the DOM and read by the browser, it calls the created callback, which will create a shadow root for it and insert the template onto the page. And now we have our markup here. And just to show you this working, we can take the TheoRocks tag, we can put it on there multiple times, run it, and now we have an exact duplicate of the TheoRocks tag. Pretty cool. So I actually have a couple examples of this, which is great. To make it a little bit more useful, now I'm going to do the TheoRocks tag. I'm going to add a source attribute to it. And so what will happen now, I think I'm big enough, right, is on the created callback, I'm going to get the image tag. I'm going to set the source equal to the attribute on the TheoRocks element, and then I'm going to append it to the DOM. So now for each TheoRocks, I can have a different image on that tag. Yeah, I really like to show off Theo. He's really cute. Helps a lot. And lastly, this is just showing that custom elements are just like any other HTML elements out there. You can add attributes to them. You can put content inside of the custom elements. And then anything that you put inside of the tag is available in the template tag, and you can select it using this content selector. So this will actually look for the H2 tag here and actually add it in that specific spot. And anything that's not selected will go to this fallback content tag. And this, again, is just showing the different stuff that you can do with custom elements as far as here's our H2 will be put at the top. My P tag will go down the bottom here, and then the rest of the content that's not there goes down the bottom. So that's awesome. This was created by W3C Specs. Google's been pushing heavy for this. Mozilla's been pushing for this. I hope everybody likes so far what custom elements can do. It's really great. But now you're probably asking, I thought this talk was about Polymer. And it is. We've been using the Polymer project for the last 8 months at Comcast. We're going to go into a little bit of what Polymer is. And I asked my coworker, what is Polymer? And he coined the phrase syntactic sugar, basically, on top of custom elements. It's not really trademarked, but it's pretty cool. And essentially, it allows you to do the same thing. Just another tangent. This was done in Polymer 0.5.6, not the latest 0.8 and 0.9, which you have to use a little bit of JavaScript to define the element. But here, we're going to do the same TheoRocks tag, create a Polymer element, same template tag inside, and now the browser just does it automatically. This is what the Polymer library is doing for us. It makes it very easy to create custom elements with shadow roots automatically. But it also gives us a lot more than this. It gives us the ability to do data binding. So here I created an array of objects which just have a different source and a title tag. And we have a template repeat, which will take the model, the Theo array, loop through it. And this is automatically data bound to the source attribute. And the title attribute is data bound down here. So it will loop through the array and print them out one at a time with the information that I have here. And the other thing that you can do with Polymer is interaction. So here I combined all the elements into one image, and I set the model equal to just one Theo. Here it is. Here's my Polymer element definition for TheoRocks. And I set the Theo to be data bound to one index of the array, just the first one. And every time we click, all it's doing is updating what the model is pointed to, which, since it's data bound, it's just going to update the H3 tag here and the image. And every time you click, it will switch the image just by switching the index in the array, which is pretty simple. And here's how you do on-click handlers in Polymer. So you just tell it on-click or on-tap or on-whatever event you want to handle, what function it should call to handle it. And then in the Polymer element, it will call this on-click function and execute it. And so this XTV carousel is definitely possible today with web components. It's definitely something that we should be doing because it's a lot easier to reuse pieces. And it gives us a lot of great benefits when you can reuse markup in HTML. A lot of things that other languages take for granted. If you've been using Ruby or Node, you have package managers. You can just download some code and rerun it. Sure, we use JavaScript and CSS all the time. One thing that we're asked all the time at Comcast is, hey, I want to create a new carousel, right? So you want to take carousel from one site and put it on another site. And so the first thing we do as developers is we go look for that carousel on that other site. We copy the JavaScript for it. Then we look at the CSS. We try to copy some of the CSS. Then we look at the markup, and then we miss one of the markup. And then it's like, it's such a pain in the butt. And the big piece here is the reusability, right? Is that we can now take something like XTV Carousel, drop it on another site, and it will just work the exact same way as it does in the first site. And it's great because before there was no way to really repackage HTML, JavaScript, and CSS all together. You could do it one, but not all three together, and now there is. And why is this important? So the main reason why it's important at Comcast is like I said, I worked on the Xfinity Home project, and we're building these pieces. This is your ARM ability in your home. Xfinity Home is a security system. So if anybody has like Brink's Home Security, or if anybody here has Comcast Home Security, you arm your house when you leave. It has door sensors, which sets off an alarm, home security system. So what we built is, this is a Polymer web component, and we want to be able to take this web component and drop it onto another site in the Comcast sphere of websites. So we have Xfinity.com, which is the main portal that a lot of our subscribers go to. We want to be able to take the custom elements that we built and just put it right into that other website and allow our customers to use it. So wouldn't it be nice if you just went to the portal and you could see whether your house is secure, what lights are on, etc. And so that really leads us to rethink how we do web development. And if we take a look at what Google's been doing, anybody see their material design? They've been spending a lot of time thinking, how do we make responsive web that looks the same on all different platforms and on iOS and Android? And even like their new inbox replacement for Gmail has the same header that you see on your web as you see on your mobile platform. And it's really great how they're challenging to be able to reuse components. And at Comcast, we're doing the same thing with Xfinity Home. So here's my session timeout. We'll see how many people are using Wi-Fi right now. We'll give that a second. Like I said, we started this project about 8 months ago. I'm going to be more than happy to talk to anybody about this after the talk, if anybody wants to know more about this project. Every element on this page is a Polymer element. So if we just inspect this, it's kind of interesting to rethink how we do web development when everything is a web component or a Polymer element. So we have an XH overview tile arm. And the great thing is we can write this once, and if we wanted to put it on another piece of the site, we could just do it. We could just drop that tag in and it exists. And you could use it in the same way that you could here. So what we learned, we really have to rethink how we do web development. We had a lot of interesting problems that we had to solve starting this 8 months ago. First thing is like, what should be a web component? When you build a whole site from scratch, you're like, okay, each page is now a web component. So when you click on overview, that actually loads XH page overview, which is a web component, into XH app. So this whole app is just XH app. You can actually drop that tag on another page and it will render the same way this does. Very interesting. We had a lot of philosophical talks about what web components should be, what shouldn't be. There was other problems that we run into. There's no native support for Shadow DOM yet, except in Chrome and Opera. Firefox has somewhat native support for it, or I think they're just putting it in now. But then there's all kinds of bugs with like the host element and deep selector. You're actually able to set CSS styles to change what the looks of web components are. Another problem we ran into was testing. When we first started this, web component tester did not exist for the Polymer library suite yet, so we were like, how do you test this? We tried looking in Selenium, and Selenium didn't have any support for Shadow DOM yet, so we were trying to click on elements and you just couldn't access them. A lot of fun. Including a JavaScript library was a big one. Moment.js, we were not using require.js. Everybody today just uses require.js, and you can have a library just imported and reused everywhere. With this, you actually have to take script tag, you put it in an HTML document, then you HTML import that document. It gets loaded once by the browser, and it's in the global window space, so then it can be used by all web components. Yet another fun problem. Another problem we had was a logger. How do you have one function shared across all the web components that exist? Fun, interesting solutions for that. And then the vulcanized build process also wasn't there when we started, and that's just the ability to take all the web components and the HTML imports, and it parses through all of them and builds it into one package. So our whole website is now like 250 kilobytes, and you download one single file, and that's our whole app. It's a single-page app. There are a few limitations with using Polymer. It's IE 10 and above. It does not work in IE 9, which was fine for us because we use WebSockets, and IE 9 does not natively support WebSockets. So we were happy with that we didn't have to support IE 9. When we started, it was 0.56. So our whole app is written in 0.56. And since then, they're now at 0.9, which is a complete rewrite that we're going to have to do to migrate over to 0.9. Because the API is a lot different, but it's 10 times faster or something like that, which is great. And we had a lot of fun doing it. So that's it. I think I'm out of time. I'm going to be around if anybody wants to talk more in depth about Polymer. I hope you guys enjoyed everything. And thank you.